So I was tagged and specifically asked to make a video responding to people using this map to try to paint Israelis as the bad guy. Like this video says Palestine in 1947 and now. Map tells everything. No, it actually doesn't. And look, I get it. You just take a look at this map, you would be like, oh my God, the Israelis city and land. And yeah, if you're a total fucking idiot who's just ignorant of all history, I can see why you would think that. So let's have a little history lesson so y'all can actually understand what you're looking at here. Because losing land like this doesn't just happen in a vacuum. No, there's a specific reason for each and every one of these fucking changes. And surprise, surprise, every fucking time is the Palestinians' fault. And look, just a warning here. We're about to do some learning. I'm about to give you some facts. So liberals, since I know you're not very big on those, you may want to leave before you actually fucking learn something. All right, let's take a look at the first map you see, which is labeled as 1947. The first lie it shows you on this map is it calls it Palestine. It wasn't called that. There has never been a nation in this area known as Palestine. This was simply the area owned by the British that was given to the Arab people. And these little white areas over here, yeah, those are tiny Jewish settlements. Back in 1936, all of this was owned by the British. And it had a mixture of mostly Arab with a tiny bit of Jewish. And in 1936, the Arabs revolted against the British and tried to murder all these Jews. So in response, the British formed what is known as the Peel Commission. The Peel Commission decided that the only way to have peace was to give each people their nation. So an Arab state and a Jewish state. And the funny thing is, the way they divided it up is a map that's left off this for some reason. So this was how they chose to divide up the land. The Arabs got all the orange here, and the Jews got this little bit of blue. Like at this point in history, the Peel Commission had determined that the Arabs got more than 80% of the land. That's pretty fucking fair. But the Arabs didn't think so. Because while the Jews completely accepted this division, the Arabs revolted yet again and went back to trying to kill every Jew. And we continued on like that for about another 10 years. In 1947, the British brought in the United Nations. And surprise, surprise, UN decided that the only way to end the violence was a two-state solution. So in November of 1947, this is how the UN divided up the land. The Arabs had got to keep all the land that they had said was important to them, and the Israelis got mostly useless, undeveloped desert. I know it looks like the Israelis got more land here, but at this time in history, most of this was just undeveloped sand. The Arabs basically kept every fucking city, every developed piece of farmland, every agricultural point and water source, and nearly every holy site. It's a pretty good fucking deal, right? Now, just like back in 1936, the Jews accepted the proposal and the Arabs decided to wage war. But this time, it wasn't just the Arabs in the local area launching the attack. No, instead, it was all these Arabs, plus Egypt, Lebanon, Jordan, Iraq, and Syria. All of the Arab nations surrounding this tiny little Jewish settlement waged war on them. But insanely enough, with all those nations against it, Israel won. And here's the best part. Even though they had defeated all of these nations bent on their annihilation, they didn't take a single inch of land from them. No, they just carried on trying to build a nation in the land they were given. Now, what they did do was occupy some land of the people in their country who had just tried to murder them. That's how we get to the third map. Now, at this point, this area of land here was actually controlled by Jordan, which you can't tell, but is actually this country here that's in the gray. Now, in 1967, the Arabs decided to try the Israelis again. This time, it was Egypt, Jordan, and Syria versus Israel. Their stated goal at that time was the complete and total annihilation of the Jewish state. They vowed to drive them into the sea. This conflict would come to be known as the Six-Day War. And wouldn't you know it, the Israelis beat that ass. Now, at this point, the Israeli government was actually completely divided on what they wanted to do with the land they acquired. Half the government wanted to return the West Bank to Jordan and Gaza to Egypt in exchange for peace. And the other half wanted to give it to the Arabs who had originally been in the region and were now calling themselves Palestinians, with the ultimate goal to have them build their own country and have peace. I want you to think about that for a second. The Israelis had just defended themselves for the second time against multiple countries bent on their annihilation. And none of their thoughts were about keeping the land for themselves. They were simply trying to decide who they could give it to that would bring the most peace. And you know what? The Arab League didn't even wait for them to make that decision. Because in 1967, the Arab League issued their famous 3 no's. Those were no peace with Israel, no recognition of Israel, and lastly, no negotiations with Israel. So the Israelis had every right to keep everything because they had defeated them in war, and they never even considered it. He then spent about the next 30 years where the Arabs suicide bombed the Jews, trying to kill as many of them as humanly possible. Throughout that time, the Palestinian Liberation Organization, the PLO, they just said no to everything Israel offered. So then in 2008, the Israelis offered even more. Israel offered all of Gaza, 98% of the West Bank, and even included additional farmland that Israel had already set up. The current leader at that time, Mahmoud Abbas, he said no. Now, even without any agreement on the table, in 2005, the Israelis left Gaza and gave it to the Palestinians. And instead of developing this little chunk of land that could have been an amazing port, no, they just turned it into a terrorist base camp. The following year, they elected Hamas to be their ruling party. They spent every single bit of their nearly $2 billion a year in international aid on weapons. And since that time, this little strip of land has launched more than 4,700 rockets into Israel, killing thousands. So what the fuck did you expect Israel to do? Just keep dying by rockets from land they gave away? Just keep accepting that the people who lived next to them were trying to murder them? Israel has tried repeatedly to give up massive amounts of land for peace. The Arabs don't want peace. Hamas and the Palestinians don't want peace. They want the annihilation of the Jewish people. And it completely blows my mind that the people who have no problem calling everyone a fucking Nazi over the last 10 years are now protesting in favor of the people who want to unalive every Jew on earth. And here's the thing, I'm still holding out hope. I hope that the people participating in these protests are just ignorant of the actual history, that they just don't know what the fuck they're talking about. Because the alternative is really fucking scary. It would mean that people recognize all the steps that the Israelis have taken for peace, all the things the Jews have done just so they can live without the fear of being murdered. That they have seen how absolutely unreasonable the Palestinians and the Arab nations can be. That they see the only reason these Arab people have rejected this is because they hate the Jews and they want to drive them into the sea and murder every one of them. Yet they still support them. And that's really scary to think that these people are really that evil. I sincerely hope that this video reaches some of you people who support Palestine. And I really hope it reaches those of you who are supporting it just because you didn't know. And I also really hope that you'll do your own research, that you won't just take my word for it and you'll look it up yourself. Because I know what I'm saying is true. And I know that Israel is not the problem here. And if you do your own research, you will too.